we meet again. My arch nemesis. No, I'm just kidding. I was pondering whether or not to do this response. I did ask myself the question, is this guy past help? I've actually given Metatron the benefit of the doubt for a long time now, thinking that he approaches subjects of integrity. I've had people who I know, who I trust, tell me over and over again, he's just an anti-black grift. He's just an anti-woke, blah, blah, blah. And I have noticed that his language is becoming more and more inflammatory. The thumbnail had me intrigued because I was like, oh, he's reacting to Matt Walsh. This is where he can draw a delineation to say, he's over here, I'm over here. You know, Matt Walsh is your extremes of alt-right, weak, insecure, white male projection of insecurity behavior. That's what you get from Matt Walsh, you know. And I think in my mind, I was like, well, Metatron is very different here than a character like that. You know, he's just someone who's passionate about history, perhaps a little bit misguided around racial ideologies, but still the guiding light of being unapologetic and reviewing source and primary materials when it comes to history will tend to put you on a decent path. I'll be honest with you, when you look at primary research, history will start to kick you in the face with some realities. One of the realities that you're going to be faced with if you don't just constantly rely on, you know, what's being pumped out by academia, but you actually get your hands and your feet dirty and you do some real digging and do some real research, is you're gonna have to deal with the fact that Black people are all over history. Okay. History is kind of my thing. Okay, I'm a kind of like enthusiast anthropologist, for want of a better word, and it becomes undeniable that we have a presence everywhere. And one of the things that becomes undeniable, even if you don't believe in a statement like that, it's going to sound extreme to some people. One thing that you won't be able to deny is that there's a very, very clear and obvious practice of whitewashing that's taken place through history. And you can uncover that for yourself. So anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail about our backstory. I'm going to go into this and see how different is Metatron from Matt Walsh. And maybe this can be the point at which I kind of like draw an X through having any hope for the redemption of this character. Or maybe he could convince me the other way. I haven't watched it all the way through. I think I watched like the first few minutes of it. Then I was like, let me do a reaction to this live, see where it goes. So wish me luck, man.
Welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today I decided to react to Matt Walsh's video just to upset my haters a little more than usual. So we've got this video. I'll be honest. If I disagree with the man, I'll say it. Okay. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think he goes a little, but other times I'm like, no, he's based. So
already this is a bad start because he sounds tentative to want to disagree with Matt Walsh. This is someone who is priming his audience in the knowledge that he is sharing an audience with this guy. So he's already acknowledging the fact that most of his fans are going to be Matt Walsh fans, and actually him reacting to Matt Walsh is going to wind up his haters, i.e. people who don't agree with far right ideology. Bad start. Oh dear.
Let's have a look. He made this video 3 weeks ago and it's called Self-Hating White Woman Licks Jasmine Crockett's Feet. Now, you know me, self-hatred from white people about themselves makes me cringe monumentally. It is what it is. I think it's one of the cringiest, like performative, virtual signaling, like the one of the most, like, oh gosh, the cringe. But anyways, I'm not aware of this. I don't even know.
How do you define self-hatred in white people? That's the interesting thing. Once again, white people can't never come up with their own terms. They're always co-opting, you know, terms that essentially the Black community have created, be it woke or fatigue, or in this case, you know, self-hatred. Okay, that's not a term or even a concept you've ever had to struggle with, because self-hatred in a white supremacist world doesn't make any sense. Okay, you haven't got the burdens of media disparaging your community. You haven't got the burdens of colonialism and an imperialist history, you know, disparaging your community. You haven't got the burdens of occupation, and you haven't got the burdens of being a minority. All of these things are the things that essentially come together to form a negative worldview about your community that's being projected by the ruling class. That's what creates self-hatred within, and that's why people within those communities have to battle with the fact that I don't like what I've been born into. It's a very real thing. So when he talks about self-hatred amongst white, how does that exhibit itself? Is this, white people who really, really, really want to be involved in the black community? White people who want to be rappers? Like, how does self-hatred amongst white people, exhibit itself? Because all you have to do is just, like, not, once again, something that white people struggle so much to do, just don't engage with the black community. And I'm sure that any problems of self-hatred you're feeling as a white person will disappear. But it's interesting. Let's see how this plays out.
Who these people are. It's a 5-minute video. Let's check it out.
Stephanie Miller is a liberal radio host, apparently, and she recently met Representative Jasmine Crockett for some reason or another. So here's how that went. This is the caption that she wrote on X. Why, yes, I did kiss the sneakers of Jasmine Crockett, and I do worship the ground she walks on. And she was lovely about it. And sure enough, you can see the photos there. There are the photos. She's on her hands and knees, kissing the feet of Jasmine Crockett, literally prostrate on the ground before her, worshiping her, licking her shoes. And then you got a bunch of other women sort of standing around, smiling approvingly. There's one woman, I don't know, that woman on the bottom left. This woman has.
Oh my gosh. You know what I would say to this? I personally think black people don't appreciate that.
Okay, so first of all, don't speak for us. Secondly, yes, there's an element of this which is very performative, but the issue that Matt Walsh, and I'm hoping not you as well, but I feel like you're going to have the same issue. The issue that you have is that they're doing this to a black person. It's not that they're doing this to a person at all, because Jasmine Crockett's race, her ethnicity, and her gender should not play into this affecting you. Me as a human being, as a man, and as a man that has, that has a sky-high self-esteem, the only person I'll prostrate myself in front of are elders in Africa, because that's part of our community and our upbringing. Yes, I will still do it. If I see my uncle, I'll be, yes, sir, yes, sir. I'll go down, prostrate myself. I won't kiss his feet, but that's the only person who I'll prostrate myself in front of. No one else. Okay. There's no white man, Asian man, whatever, they'll ever get me to prostrate. Okay. It's a cultural thing, intercultural thing. So when I'm in Nigeria, okay, and not necessarily just within my ethnic group, I'll do it with an old Igbo man, maybe even it's an African thing, to be honest with you. There's a lot of African men who I'd be happy, elder men who I'd be happy to prostrate myself in front of. But other than that, no one else. Okay, so I don't have any of those kind of hang-ups. Okay, I said man, woman, anything. Okay, but it's an elder thing within the community that I come from, to prostrate yourself. It's a respect thing. Now, obviously, you don't have that within your communities, this idea of prostrating yourself out of respect to someone who's an elder. And obviously, she's clearly older than Jasmine Crockett. So your issue here should be with the behavior. It shouldn't be with the race and the gender. But what we're going to see from this video is that your issue is all to do with the race and the gender. In other words, if she had done this to a white man, I don't think there'd even be a video about it. Okay, you wouldn't be calling it woke. You wouldn't have the capability or the ammunition to call it woke. So once again, this is just an expression of your latent misogyny and racism.
Conservative or liberal, why don't you treat black people like people? This is weird. Oh, this is so me, look at me. I swear, like these things, what society? I'm going to continue. Let's go.
I mean, there's look, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a teeny weeny bit where I kind of like agree with him here, because this does seem OTT. And once again, this is not a practiced behavior. I'd want to know why she felt that much emotion to do this to this woman. It does seem like a little bit. So I'm going to give a little bit of a pass, but not to Matt Walsh, only to Metatron on this occasion, because this seems like a genuine critique. But let's see if we can keep up.
I said enough.
gone insane with joy. She is so pleased by the spectacle of another white woman bowing before a black woman.
Yeah.
That look at her. She's.
Well, there you go. I told you, all about race. A white woman bowing before a black woman. Metatron says, yeah. So it's all about the race for you. It's not about, you know, I'm disgusted by this presentation of them doing this thing that's not within our culture, or, you know, bowing before somebody else, you know, bowing before someone who's so young, maybe might have even be the issue. But it's all about the white, the black, okay, proving that it's the racial issue. This is like a white supremacist, like, so the reason this woman's doing it, I'd imagine, is to wind up people just like Matt Walsh. She can imagine the kind of impact it has on this white male Christian society to see the visualization of a older white woman bowing to a younger black woman. It drives them nuts. So in many ways, she's probably just trolling and having great success, because almost as predictably as as pressing play, here you are with your negative reaction to it. You know, it's predictable.
This is the most perfect photo ever taken when it comes to illustrating the leftist mind virus. You'll never see a better one. I mean, this is the four of them together, those four photos. A middle-aged liberal white woman on her hands and knees kissing the feet of a semi-literate black DEI congresswoman.
Okay, so there you go. So this is where it gets loaded. Semi-literate DEI black congresswoman. First of all, Jasmine Crockett is more qualified than you will ever be, Matt Walsh. And in terms of her literacy, she would literally walk you up and down the street like a dog if you had any kind of debate with her. She's incredibly literate. The fact that she occasionally leans on, and I say very occasionally because I think it's just more her accent and her expressiveness that offends people like Matt Walsh, because they are scared of the fact that she's so articulately, and yes, she's incredibly articulate, strings together her culture into the way that she expresses herself without sounding stupid. So you saying semi-literate is just the cope, because anyone who's listened to Jasmine Crockett speak will know that she can also sling in that AAVE and speak in a way that's very relatable. She doesn't stammer. She doesn't stutter. I stutter a lot. I put in a lot of ums when I speak. I do a hell of a lot of editing down after I've created a video like this. She literally is able to just present her ideas in a seamless manner, and you are absolutely hating. And next, calling her DEI is ridiculous. Can I make something very, very clear? The people that are most likely to be in a position in any organization that is undeserving, not based on merit, based on nepotism, and or based on their race and ethnicity and gender are white males. That is a fact. And that's not something that you cannot debate about. Just look at the rate. If you want to have a debate about this, let me give you a statistic from your good old Charlie Kirk, actually, this one. American Airlines wanted to increase its female and ethnic diversity quota from 15% to 50%. So do you know what that means? That means the percentage of people when they started this initiative that were not female, i.e. were men, and were not brown and black, i.e. were white, was 85%. So their pool of employees was 85% white males before they started their DEI initiative. Now, straight away, people like Matt Walsh and perhaps Metatron will run straight away and go, oh, well, you know, they were in those jobs because they were the best suited for the positions. They deserve it. Well, we could literally just juxtapose that with the rates of graduation in America. In terms of numbers of graduations, of percentages of people graduating with professional qualifications in America, is it 85% white male? I don't even have to look at the statistics. We all know the answer to that question. It's absolutely not. Rates of employment, if we're talking about qualified professionals, should correspond with output and graduated professionals. That there should be a direct correspondence. There isn't. What you have is a massive disproportionate rate of employment into professional positions for white males that greatly exceeds their actual representation within the population. It massively exceeds it. So therefore, that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that white men are employed into positions that they don't deserve to be in at a rate that they don't deserve to see reflected. And yet you're going to sit here and call an educated black woman who has earned her position in Congress a DEI because it's just pathetic. And this is the thing. Charlie Kirk was the one who created this talking point, and ironically didn't even realize the statistic he was sharing regarding United Airlines having an 85% white male workforce. See, no problem with that. Claiming that that's a clear example of meritocracy where only white men are capable people. This is the deludedness that they've literally bred into the nation. And this is why America can't compete with the rest of the world without military. The only way America has remained relevant in terms of the world's economic dynamics is that they have the ability to invade, destroy, and rebuild nations. They do it periodically as a part of their economic policy. Is constant invasions into different parts of the world, because on a meritocracy, just based on what you output as individuals, you have to either be deconstructing another nation, destroying it, or creating a situation where you can literally just enter the foray as the sole provider, the sole manufacturer, the sole distributor, because you are the ones who are responsible for removing what was there before and creating new opportunities for yourselves in other nations and for your useless dollar. That's how you do it. That's how you maintain it. You do not have the ability to compete in a true global meritocracy. That is a fact. You don't even have the ability to compete in a local meritocracy, in a US-based, a domestic meritocracy. You don't have the ability to do it.
Who isn't even qualified to be a waitress at Waffle House.
Of course, I don't know if what he's saying about the congresswoman is true. I have no idea. Generally speaking,
well, it's not true. And you just need to hear her speak to know that it's not true. But this is just, white male insecurity and hatred in a nutshell.
I am against the concept of DEI, and I think people should be hired based on their merits and academic preparation, or whether or not they are the best or the fittest for the job. And if that happens,
and once again, he's just said, I don't believe in the concept of DEI because I believe people should be hired on the merit that they're the best for the job. That is DEI. Okay. DEI makes sure that organizations like United Airlines, who are hiring exclusively white males, irrespective of whether or not they are the best or the most suited for the job, DEI makes sure that they put in practices and regulations to make sure that their actual rates of hiring reflect the rates of professionals, the actual number of professionals from different ethnic groups and from the female gender that are out there, and don't just hire white males. Okay, so if you live in a country where white male graduates, because we're looking at professionals, people who are fit to do the job, where white male graduates only make up, I don't know what the figure is, but let's say 15 to 20% of the population, then they should make up 15 to 20% of your workforce in a meritocracy. Do we see that? No. We see 85% in organizations like United Airlines. The only DEI beneficiaries are white males. That's provable. That's a fact. If you want to come back to that, feel free.
Happens to be a black person, it's a black person. If it happens to be an Asian, it's an Asian. If it happens to be a white person, it's a white person. And I'm strongly against.
And that's DEI. Once again, I'm going to say that. If it needs to be any of these races, it will be. You need DEI to stop racist organizations and racist hiring practices, not the other way around. It's not a case of they're going to default to picking the right person, because what history has shown is that they'll default to picking a white male, irrespective of if that is the best person.
the idea of, no, we're going to reject you even though you were the most qualified simply because you're white, because, I mean, that's wrong. It's just wrong. Here's what it is. At this point, you just, no.
And just to be clear, that doesn't happen. People aren't rejected because they're white. People are rejected because they're female or they're black or they're brown. Those are the reasons for rejection. No one has ever been rejected because they're white. This is just white male insecurity projecting itself around the world, just like they do in the film culture. You know what I mean? Oh my God, oh my God, they haven't picked a white male protagonist. It's like, for fuck's sake, just grow the hell up. Strap on a pair. If this is how you're going to react to such small amount of competition, how are you going to, this is why you're so ineffective at competing in this world. And the thing about it is you've convinced the rest of the world that you're so far ahead, this, that, and the other. And I think people are just literally waking up to the fact that without your military, you literally are nothing. Without having that military prowess and that military, that capability and that ruthlessness to kill, you absolutely are nothing. You don't offer anything else to the world. And this behavior just proves it.
I'm against that thing. But I don't know if that's the case for this congresswoman. As far as I don't know. She could be extremely well learned, or she could be a DEI hire. At this point, who knows? I haven't got a clue. So I can't really comment on that. He might be right. He might be wrong. What
about Matt Walsh? What's his credentials, you know, to be speaking on these subjects? Because he doesn't come across as the most educated person to me.
Idiot!
Comes across as a bit of a dimwit, you know. No one ever questions the credentials of the white.
Don't do. If she is an incompetent DI hire, then he's right. Full stop. But if she's instead an ultra qualified woman and she's in the perfect.
Well, she's not. She's objectively not incompetent. Okay. And this whole idea that black people have to be 20 times more qualified than their white counterpart, that's one of the things that we try to get rid of. That's one of the things we try to reduce with DEI, because that's what inevitably the world defaults to, a situation where we in the black community are well aware that we need to have 5 times the qualifications of our white counterparts. Why should we? Why can't you accept that a white person and a black person of equal qualification should be picked, 50% of the time? Okay, if this was a meritocracy world, well, we know that's not the case. We know that a white person and a black person, same qualifications, white person will be picked almost 100% of the time. The black person only gets a look in when they have further qualifications, to the point where they have so much extra benefit that it becomes nonsensical to pick the white person. This is what we try to address with DEI, and then that is misinterpreted as hiring someone who's not fit for the job. Meanwhile, that same organization has been hiring white men that aren't fit for the job for decades.
Perfectly capable to do her job, then that's that, and he's wrong. It's really that simple. At least that's my worldview. I only care about the truth.
Much less sit in Congress, and yet here she is. And amazingly, of course, these are also the people who claim that Trump voters are in a cult. These are the people these are also the people who go around chanting "No Kings." In fact, I looked this up, and unsurprisingly, Stephanie Miller herself, when I checked this, she has attended.
By the way, I'm not a fan of leftist politics. I'm not a fan of the left, because essentially, as soon as Democrats or whatever you want to call them have their day in office, they completely forget about black people. They use black people as a tool. In fact, often Democratic governments have the most overtly racist policies, but the way they like to push them out is by just not using the N-word. I think it was Bill Clinton, Democratic president, who created the 3 strikes rule in the States, where you commit 3 crimes and you get life imprisonment irrespective, and it was greatly targeted towards the black community. They've always had these policies. So I'm not a leftist. I don't believe in left. I think they try to group up all of their support teams into one. This kind of like, as a black person, I have to align myself with LGBTQ and all these other policies that I personally perhaps do not agree with, or maybe I personally differ from. You kind of say, well, you can do that, but that's not for me and my family. I don't believe in left or right policies. As a black person, I think they are both 2 sides of the same white supremacist machine. My thing here is just to defend Jasmine Crockett, not because she's a leftist, but because I'm not going to allow these fragile, insecure white males to tear down a woman purely based on the fact that she's a black female.
Anti-racist now is a red flag, because when I hear someone saying anti-racist, I have to think, does he actually mean, or does she actually mean that they're anti-racists, meaning that they're against all forms of discrimination and racism, no matter who the recipient is, or are they insane, radicalized individuals that are in fact anti-white? That's what
And this is where he's got to get a bit ridiculous, because this is where, once again, an anti-white racism in the end always just ends up being people who want to see a shift away from white male dominance. They can't actually cite any real persecution, like we've seen with the whole job thing and the DEI thing, saying, oh yeah, white males are not being hired for positions. It's kind of like nothing in the statistics, nothing in any organizations, kind of, if you look for their books, hiring policies suggest that white males are being placed at a disadvantage. You just don't like to compete. And then this whole idea of, anti-white racism, where it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Someone telling white men to stop being racist isn't racism, okay? Affirmative action isn't racism against white people. And it's kind of like this need to shift yourself, this desire to be the underdog, to shift yourself into victim position, when everything in this world, everything is geared towards your success as a white male. And I've always boiled it down to this, actually. If you fail as a white male, I've realized why kind of like sui, whatever, what I'm going to say, rates is so high amongst that group, and also the rates of, mass pew-pewings. The reason these things happen within specifically white male communities, or at least disproportionately amongst white male communities, because if you fail as a white male, it's kind of like the ultimate failure. The entire world is geared for your success. The entire world. You have a passport that can take you to any nation, and then as soon as you step off the plane, you will be treated like you're at the top. Okay, you will go to a job, and as long as you literally have the requisite amount of qualifications, you are the most likely to be hired for it. You could raise funding like that. You can go and get the most favorable deals from banks for loans and mortgages, etc., etc. You have an entire domestic military force called the police, who is geared towards your protection. Literally, everything in this world is geared for your success. And if you still fail as a human being, then it really means that you have nothing to fall back on. Okay, you can't blame any circumstance. So as a result, you go pew, pew, or you go pew, 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 pew. Those are your two ways of expressing because you've literally failed at life and you have nothing to blame for it. You can't blame poverty. Even if you're raised in a poor environment, you can't really blame poverty, because everything around you is so geared up for your success. All you can blame is the fact that you as an individual have not been able to cut it in this thing called life. And that is very, very sobering. And by the way, I'm not saying this as any kind of flex, but this is one of the reasons why, it just dawned on me the other day, this is one of the reasons why the actions of the failures in their society are always so extreme. Because failing as someone who is literally being given everything on a social, economic, international strata is major failure.
That's what I have to ask myself now. And that's dystopia right there.
You peasant. You serf.
I mean, yeah.
Bowing before this woman. And look,
Serva della gleba.
we as Americans, we do not bow before any man or woman. It is disgraceful to do that. It's the most un-American thing you could possibly do. True. Americans bow before God and God alone.
Right.
So, and he should have led with this, okay, rather than leading with the fact that it was a black woman who's illiterate and doesn't be, because none of that, when you think about it, when you deepen, none of that needed to be said. This could have actually been a pretty decent video if he had just led with the fact that this is cringe. Americans don't bow. You're bound for this person to be performative. But the fact that you had to lean into the insults towards the black person and the fact that it's a female just prove the fact that you are racist and misogynist. And then your entire message, once again, doesn't fly, and you just lose any potential you have of being, presenting yourself as a reasonable human being. But I know you don't want to be presented as a reasonable human being anyway, because you're not one. You're an incel.
Right.
But to make matters worse,
Amen.
You are bowing before the most mediocre human who has ever lived on the planet. The only thing impressive about Jasmine Crockett is how unimpressive she is. The most unimpressive nothing of a person who has ever lived.
Shut your lame ass up, nigga.
This is projection if I've ever seen it, because I think everybody watching this video right now is thinking Matt Walsh, they'd probably prefer to be Jasmine Crockett than you. Like, you are literally the personification of unimpressive. The way you speak is unimpressive. The way you look is unimpressive. Your perspective on life is unimpressive. Everything that you do is unimpressive. You remind me of like Ben Shapiro's. Like, you are the picture of mundane. You are literally dry, crusty sourdough bread. That's what I think of when I look at you. And you're talking about, Jasmine Crockett, as though your life is so superior. In which way? She's fighting for people's freedom. She's got legacy. You know what? When she passes in the future, she'll be remembered. What do you think your legacy is going to be? You're like a mediocre, less impressive Charlie Kirk. And he's not even got a good legacy. Pathetic.
A person who is so thoroughly middling and uninspiring that in an actual meritocracy, she would not advance, certainly not beyond the position of like shift manager at Dairy Queen.
Music is a little...
And I have to, it's the irony of what he's saying. Once again, having already proved that the only people who are benefiting from us not being in a meritocracy are white males, him sitting here on his mediocre media platform, okay, it's a media platform, his kind of like his YouTube channel that only literally exists because he's managed to find disgruntled, disconcerted white males to spew his poison to, and saying in a meritocracy you wouldn't exist. It's like, come on, man.
Managers at Dairy Queen. But
Dairy Queen is good, though.
She's the kind of she's the one who she shows up when you ask to speak to a manager because they got your order wrong, but they won't fix it because they don't care. And then she appears and she has an even worse attitude than the employee you were just dealing with. So that's Jasmine Crockett.
And that was his attempt to be funny there. You're supposed to laugh at the end of that story. She's the one who you complain, and then the manager comes, and the manager's even worse than the first person. There's no charisma. There's no pizzazz. Nothing about the way you present would make me ever watch a second video. The only reason you're actually getting any bringing is because I'm critiquing Metatron. If Metatron wasn't here, you wouldn't even make it on my channel. And I've barely got 1,000 subscribers on this channel.
And yet she reached all the way to Congress because the left, as we see here, worships mediocrity. I mean, literally worships it. As long as it's black mediocrity. They worship black mediocrity. And then,
I mean, obviously this was...
He says they worship black mediocrity. The literal president of the United States is semi-autistic, certainly not literate, and is the literal embodiment of mediocrity. And yet he's talking about in Congress that only celebrate black mediocrity, whereas Jasmine Crockett is probably more brilliant than anything the Republican Party has produced in the last 20 years. And I'm not even into American politics like that. It's like, who are you kidding, man? Seriously.
Again, if you're a fan of mine and you're black and we meet, for instance, at an airport, I'm going to shake your hand and I'm going to tell you, thank you for watching, man. I'm going to treat you no different than anyone else. And you know why I said airport? Because it happened, of course. We even took a picture together. It was great. But this is This is nonsense. This is what on earth?
I find it slightly worrying that you have to qualify. And I think that should be a moment of introspection for Metatron. Why do you have to qualify that you'd be humane if you met one of your black fans? Why do you have to qualify that it would be a pleasant experience? I think you need to do that because you realize that your content perhaps has an anti-black bias, and perhaps your pro-whiteness has gone too far. That's what that sounds like to me, because I wouldn't need to qualify that, hey, look, if you're white and you're one of my fans and I bump into you, hey man, I'm going to shake your hand. I wouldn't need to qualify that. I think white people who come on my channel would know that, because I'm not literally tarring all white people with a single brush. There's specific sects. There's specific sects of society, like red pill, you know, insecure white male incels who blame everything that goes wrong in their life on people of color and on women. Those are specific sects of white society that I target. And people who don't fall within those sects tend to not be offended by the things that I say. And so I wouldn't even need to qualify, because they'd know that would be the case. The fact that you need to qualify means that you kind of know that your perhaps blanket statements against black people, black community, or something is going on there. And I think that's a moment of introspection for you, if I'm going to be totally honest. Well, that was it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because it's already gone on for way too long. That was very underwhelming. In fairness, I didn't see a huge amount wrong with what Metatron said. He was quite measured in the way that he made his critiques. I think he could have been more critical, and maybe he is in the second half of this video, but I'm thoroughly bored at this stage and I'm not going to look at it. So maybe he is more critical, or maybe he is more in agreement with Matt Walsh as the video goes on. I would just question, you know, why, once again, why he's tiptoeing around critiquing Matt Walsh. I think he's identified that they share an audience, and that, to me, if I was Metatron, that would be horrifying. You know, if I shared an audience with someone as vile as Matt Walsh, you know, that should be, you know, if the next thing, if you share your audience with Nick Fuentes, for instance, Metatron, then surely you've realized that you've gone too far. You've swung too far in one direction. Surely you would be realizing that. Anyway, that's all. I haven't got much more to say. Peace.
If you knew what you were made of, then we would say